It was a cloudy afternoon when everything began to spiral out of control. My mother and stepfather, who had always claimed to act in my best interest, were arrested. I stood on the front porch, frozen as the police escorted them away. The neighbors whispered among themselves, their curious glances adding fuel to the fire of my turmoil. My mother's parents, who had once been my staunchest supporters, now glared at me with resentment. They blamed me for the arrests, but I knew deep down that I had no other choice. My life had not been easy since my father's death 10 years ago. I was only 7 when we lost him, and my relationship with my mother had been strained ever since. She remarried a man named Phil a few years ago, a man I had grown to despise. Phil was everything my father wasn't: manipulative, lazy, and worst of all, abusive, though not in the physical sense. His words cut like knives, and he spared no effort in reminding me of my place in the house. My mother, instead of protecting me, seemed to side with him at every turn. At 17, I'd learned to fend for myself. I started working odd jobs at the age of 10, knowing that my mother wouldn't save a dime for my future. Over the years, I managed to save around $7,000, carefully tucked away in a wooden box my father had crafted for me. My savings were my ticket to freedom, to college and a life far away from the toxicity that surrounded me. But a few days ago, that dream was shattered. I discovered the box empty, my hard-earned money gone. Confronting my mother, I learned the horrifying truth. Phil had taken the money to invest in a new house. Rage boiled within me as I demanded answers, but their dismissive attitudes left me powerless. "You should be grateful we're finally getting a house of our own," my mother said, as if that justified their betrayal. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried until my body ached. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming, but amidst the tears, I made a vow. They had stolen my future, and I would make them pay. 3 days later, the opportunity for revenge presented itself. My mother decided to host a housewarming party for the new home, a home bought with my stolen savings. The sheer audacity of it enraged me. While she busied herself with preparations, I contacted my paternal grandparents. We hadn't spoken in years. After my father's death, they had distanced themselves, unable to cope with the pain of losing their son. But I had no one else to turn to. To my relief, they answered my call. I told them everything, from the theft of my savings to the abusive environment I endured daily. What they revealed next shocked me to my core. My father had left a college fund for me, a substantial amount that I had never known about. My grandparents sent me documents proving its existence, signed by my mother after my father's death. The funds were meant to secure my education and future, yet my mother had kept this from me. My heart raced as I pieced everything together. It became clear that my mother and Phil had not only stolen my savings, but had likely misused the college fund as well. With the evidence in hand, I reached out to an old family friend, a police officer who had worked with my father. He agreed to investigate further. On the evening of the housewarming party, he arrived at our new home, accompanied by another officer and a lawyer. As the guests mingled and toasted to the new beginnings, my mother and Phil were taken into custody. The room fell silent as handcuffs clicked into place. My mother glared at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and fury. "How could you do this to your own family?" she spat as the officers led her away. But I didn't flinch. This was justice, not revenge. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My maternal grandparents, who had always supported me, now refused to speak to me. They couldn't understand why I had taken such drastic measures. For days, I felt isolated and unsure of my next steps. The house, as it turned out, was legally under Phil's daughter's name. Selling it or recovering my stolen money would be a long, arduous legal battle. But I wasn't ready to give up. As I dug deeper into the case, I uncovered more disturbing truths. My paternal grandparents, feeling remorseful for their earlier inaction, revealed that my mother had conspired with both sets of grandparents to embezzle funds meant for me. Documents and email exchanges provided irrefutable evidence of their betrayal. The realization that my entire family had plotted against me was a bitter pill to swallow. I felt betrayed, not just by my mother, but by everyone I had once trusted. Fueled by anger and determination, I worked with the lawyer to build a solid case. The trial that followed was grueling. Over 3 months, evidence was presented, witnesses testified, and the extent of the conspiracy was laid bare. The court's final verdict was both a victory and a bittersweet moment. My mother received a 5-year prison sentence for embezzlement and document forgery. Phil was sentenced to 2 years as an accomplice. Both sets of grandparents were placed on probation, and their assets were frozen to repay the stolen funds. The house was seized and sold, with the proceeds allocated to my college education. While justice was served, the emotional toll was immense. I had lost my family, not just to the legal system, but to their own greed and selfishness. The support of friends became my lifeline. One friend's father, a lawyer, offered invaluable guidance and even co-signed a student loan to ensure I could start college without financial worries. The kindness of strangers and distant acquaintances filled the void left by my broken family. Months after the trial, a new chapter began. I enrolled in college, determined to build a life free from the shadows of my past. The experience had changed me in profound ways. It ignited a passion for justice and law, leading me to pursue an internship at the law firm that had handled my case. Through this opportunity, I found a sense of purpose and direction, turning my pain into something meaningful. The story didn't end there. My ordeal gained attention in the local media, sparking conversations about the rights of young people and the importance of standing up against familial abuse. I began sharing my experiences on social media, connecting with others who had faced similar challenges. What started as a personal tragedy evolved into a platform for advocacy and change. The support and empathy I received from strangers around the world were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As I look back on everything that happened, I am struck by the lessons I've learned. True family is not defined by blood, but by love, trust, and mutual respect. Justice may be painful, but it is necessary for healing and growth. And most importantly, even in the darkest moments, there is always a path forward. My journey is far from over, but I face the future with hope, determination, and the unwavering belief that I can overcome any obstacle. Reflecting on those days, I realized that hope was my anchor through it all. A year after the trial, I found myself thriving in college. The solitude that once felt unbearable became an opportunity to rediscover myself. I joined clubs, made friends, and began shaping a new identity, far removed from the shadows of my past. Each day, I grew more confident, knowing I had stood up against injustice, even when the cost felt insurmountable. At college, I gravitated toward legal studies, a field I had never considered before the trial. My professors noticed my determination and encouraged me to pursue internships in advocacy groups and law firms. It was during one of these internships that I encountered cases eerily similar to my own. Each story fueled my drive to make a difference. I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was paving the way for others to reclaim theirs. Back at home, the aftermath of the trial continued to ripple. My mother's absence left a void that Phil's daughter struggled to fill. Though she was cleared of direct involvement, her life had been turned upside down. She reached out to me months later, expressing her anger and confusion. While I couldn't forgive the past entirely, I chose to meet her halfway. Our shared pain became a fragile bridge toward understanding. Perhaps we could both find closure in time. Meanwhile, I deepened my connection with my paternal grandparents. Though their betrayal had cut deeply, their later efforts to make amends spoke volumes. They offered to contribute toward my college expenses, but I declined. Instead, I asked for their emotional support, to stand by me as I pursued justice for others. Their remorse became the foundation of our renewed relationship. As graduation approached, I received an unexpected invitation to speak at a local youth advocacy conference. Sharing my story with an audience was both terrifying and liberating. I spoke of courage, resilience, and the importance of standing up for oneself. The response was overwhelming. Young people approached me with their own stories of betrayal and perseverance. For the first time, I felt that my pain had a purpose. By the time I donned my graduation cap, I was no longer defined by the struggles of my past. The legal battles, the betrayals, and the isolation had forged a stronger version of myself. As I looked out at the crowd, I spotted my friends, mentors, and even my paternal grandparents. They had become my true family, bound not by blood, but by unwavering support and shared dreams. Today, as I embark on my career in law, I carry those lessons with me. Every case I take, every client I help, is a reminder of where I've been and where I'm going. My story is no longer just about loss. It's about reclaiming power and building a future defined by hope and justice. No matter what lies ahead, I know I'm ready to face it head on.